There we go. A good suggestion. We've got it. And what we're going to do is now when we do our presentations next week and the week after that, we're going to be in breakout rooms. We likely won't do that, but our time together. So if you miss any piece of it or you have to jump off or jump back on, then Sushi, we're going to have those recordings available to you. Good.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. So if you have your materials, also, here's what I want to also know is I find that I usually get the most out of, and especially in a virtual environment, this type of training when you're helping out, when you're contributing. And so I'm going to ask a whole lot of questions, and I'd like you to jump in or raise your hand if you want to. That's why, as much as possible, if we can stay on camera, because I find, you'll see in just a minute, when it comes to communication, there are a few ways that we communicate that requires us seeing one another so we can communicate best. So thank you for keeping that on. Okay, let me go ahead and turn on my slides for just a moment and get that ready to go. My, hang on. You guys know exactly what I'm going through when I have to open these up. Can everybody see them? Got it? Okay, excellent. All right, so what I wanted to just kind of start with and really focus on is, tell me for just a minute, someone just shout out or raise your hand, what is communication? I mean, how do you know it's taking place? Somebody define it for me. What is it?
I'll jump in if you want.
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
ideas are being exchanged and acknowledged, I think, is a good way to define.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, because that shows the two sides. Information or ideas are being shared, and then there's acknowledgement. Anything else that you would do to define communication? Or let me ask you this: how do you know when you're experiencing it?
Communication is passing a message across in a clear way to the recipient, in my mind.
Okay, good. So back to that sort of exchange, you're passing ideas, concepts along to one another. Okay, excellent. So what gets in our way? Like, why is communication challenging?
It's the way you communicate. Sometimes the recipient doesn't understand your term. Sometimes you need to adapt to what the person, in our case, when we work in this field, sometimes we can get too technical. So we need to make it less technical, more understandable, if you want.
Right. Okay. So sometimes it depends on, from what I'm hearing you say, is it depends on who it is you're communicating with, and they may or may not fully grasp everything that you're sharing, if it's technical or they're not, or you are, etc. Okay, excellent. Any other possible barriers or challenges that get in our way?
Sometimes the communicator is not saying what he actually means to say.
Okay. So while it's supposed to be an idea being transferred, they might be either you're detecting there's a lot they're not saying, or it's incomplete, or it's hard to understand. Okay, anything else, Charles, you'd add to that?
Sometimes
versions.
Okay, hold on, George, just a second. Charles, go ahead and add that.
Just sometimes when people speak, they want to deliver a message, and the words that they're using are not reflecting their true emotions and what they actually mean in their mind.
Okay, so as a receiver of that, it's something more you detect, right? That you're hearing what they're saying, but there are other cues that are making, maybe they're not telling you everything, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so George, what were you going to add to that?
I would like to share that most of the time people coming from different backgrounds and different businesses, so they don't have a common platform. And such, for example, when we are speaking from a solution perspective, the other guys speaking from different business perspective, and even for the terms that they are sharing, sometimes it's completely from our understanding, it's different that we thought.
Yeah.
So always there is gaps from understanding because people coming from different backgrounds.
Yes, and can we agree that those backgrounds come in a whole lot of different packages? It could be culture, it could be language, it could be generational, it could be experience, it could be, all of those things. Can we all agree that those are all different ways that we have different points of view or perspectives? So Mohammed, add what you were going to add to it.
It's related to what George said. It's coming in with different assumptions, which may be different, maybe based on your background or maybe based on thinking. Sometimes it's actually on very blatant or obvious things where people think we're discussing one point or one topic, and you just have enough confusion, enough similar words, just enough terms that refer to the same topic where you think we're addressing one thing and the other person is addressing one thing, and keep discussing and spinning your wheels till you hit the wall and wait, what are you talking about? No, I'm talking about this. And so always find that it helps in doing that. One thing I'd add to that, well, communication is obviously takes many forms. We're talking about virtual, so probably meeting like this, especially with the camera, is the easiest. But emails or worse, social media are like the worst in generating this misunderstanding type situations.
Okay, Mohammed, you're absolutely right especially about when there's certain elements of communication we don't have, like seeing each other or tone of voice.
Yeah, especially the tone of voice. But like with emails, what I typically do is if there's any, sometimes, even if it's in the same chain of emails or what have you, what I, as much as I can, like to do is put a line, hey, this is in the context of that topic, blah, 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 this would happen, kind of a quick recap. Unfortunately, I fall to this too, not everybody will read the chain or will be up to speed. They may read it, get that email when they're already thinking of something else, and subconsciously they think it's about the same topic. Happens to me a lot of times. So
yeah. Oh, all important things for us to recognize. And hang on just a minute, I got to add someone back in. You're absolutely right on all of that. And so it's a wonder sometimes communication happens at all. So when there are so many variables, but here's what these few Fridays are about. We know this, but sometimes we don't know what to do about it. And so I'm getting feedback. Is anybody hearing that?
Yeah, I'm getting feedback as well.
Is it from me? Can you tell? I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay, let me just let me know you give me feedback on that. So here's what we're recognizing. What we're going to try to do, and you can't do this every single time, but what we're attempting especially when we're communicating in the workplace. However, I would say everything that we're going to talk about is applicable in your personal relationships and at home. Yeah. Communication with other human beings is communication. What we're going to try to do is analyze and minimize, if not eliminate, as many barriers as you possibly can. And really what that means is we just need to be aware of and then intentional with. And I would say most of the times that I have missed communication with other people is because I either wasn't aware or I just hadn't stopped to intentionally remove those barriers. So that's going to be this point of discussion to recognize when we have certain elements that we communicate with, and how can we be the best communicator possible. So you see, we're on track for the mission. And in doing that, I want to just roll over what I believe are 3 communication mindsets or beliefs. So let me just throw these out. I've been teaching this to companies all over the world, really, for decades. And so these are going to seem so simple. You're thinking, what? However, I think sometimes we don't focus on them. Number 1, everything communicates. Everything communicates. So someone was just saying a little bit ago, I think it might have been, Charles, it might have been you, saying sometimes there are things people aren't saying. Well, sometimes what we say, what we don't say, how we say it, our voice, our tone, our body language, our discomfort or comfort, all of that says something, right? So when we speak too softly or too loudly, or we get nervous, or all of that sends a message. So communicators, everything communicates. I have to tell you, I started a nonprofit. We teach teenagers how to communicate better, especially with other adults. And that whole, like, we have to tell them, okay, when you go, that communicates. When you sigh, when you go, and all of those things. We'll talk more about that, but that's one of the mindsets. The second one is this. This is so important, a little bit mind-blowing. The value of your communication isn't how you communicated. It's the response you got. Okay, everybody with me on that? So in other words, it isn't just about us. We send the message, and yes, we need to put it together properly, but it really is, did it get the response you were looking for? And the reason this one's a big one here is because I think a lot of times our communication, and this is happening all over the world with everybody, is we tend to throw it out there and then go, oh, I sent it. Hey, I sent the email. I mean, clearly, if they didn't open the email, well, I can't do anything about that. But see, if we say, okay, the value of my communication is actually the response I get, what does that say? Why is that unique? Anybody want to share? Kaylee, what do you think? Why is that unique?
I mean, it shows that you've delivered your point across to them.
Yeah. Well, and if you make it about the response, then you can change it up as often as you want, because you're still in control of it. You're saying, oh, it's my bad. For instance, the fact that you guys did not have those emails sitting in your inboxes where they should have been coming from me is on me. So whatever I need to do next week to be sure you get that communicated to you, I know if I didn't get the response I want, it's me. Does that make sense? Because I think there are a lot of times we go, well, it's them. They just don't listen. They didn't hear me. If you take responsibility for it, you can change it. You can do something about it. So that's why that's so important. The last one is with everything, and you've probably heard this at Hitachi Solutions many times, connect first. Then you can communicate. Because what does connection do for you in your communication? Michelle?
Understanding the client mostly. Is understanding.
Understanding? Okay. Michelle Lewis, did you have something?
Wrong, Michelle, sorry.
That's all right. That's okay. Wait, I can't hear you. Let's see. What do you think? Go ahead.
Oh, we can't hear you.
Nope. Not yet. All right.
Yeah, I would say, Jackie, if you connect first, it would make it easy to communicate.
Okay.
Yeah. You're
How about-
absolutely right. Go ahead, Michelle. Yes, we got you.
Okay. So I was going to say that the response you get is also based on the biases and the beliefs of the other person.
Right. Right. It's complex. Yeah.
I can communicate perfectly, but if I'm dealing with somebody who has biases based off of what I look like, or where I'm from or whatever, then my communication can be spot on, but it's not necessarily, I'm not going to get necessarily a good response from that person. So I think the value of your communication can be based off of the response you get if you're dealing with somebody who sees you as an equal, or who respects you. But aside from that, then no, it's not really all on you.
Okay, so I love that comment, Michelle, and thank you for sharing that. I would say that as we move through our discussion about this, that what we're looking for is understanding of who it is we're speaking toward. And really, it's saying between them moving closer to my style or me moving closer to their style. You're going to notice when we talk about DISC in just a little bit about the truth is, you can know all kinds of things about our own style of communicating. But if you really want to have that connection, if you really want the response, then we have to find the way to communicate, even with people who don't agree with us, who don't, respect us. Those are things that, as an ongoing life challenge, we continue to try to find, how can I move closer to them? We're going to deal with a little bit more with that. Michelle, I hear you loud and clear on that. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how we might do that as we move along. So you get, though, that you and I have mindsets. I mean, we can't help it. We're humans, right? So, but that perspective and mindset about communication can dictate how we're communicating. And let's just lay it out this way. When it comes right down to that whole 100% of the communication, we just need to fully take responsibility for our 100% for our 50% of the communication. It takes two to tango, that's for sure. So I hear you loud and clear. I just want to give you a few ideas for how you move towards someone who maybe in the past has been a challenge for you to communicate with, because they are different or are coming from a different perspective. And how do we move more toward them to make that communication work? So let's talk for just a second, though, about that last one where we said, okay, when you communicate, when you have a connection before you communicate, what does that look like? What's connection first off look like? Like if you have felt like you had a connection either with a colleague or with a client, what would that, like, how would you know you have it? What would that look like or feel like? Somebody share with me, what do you experience when you know you have a connection?
The responsive of the client, how the client start responding to your idea. They become more agreeable to what you're suggesting.
Okay, so you're noticing there's more maybe interchange. Is that how you're
Yes.
seeing that? Okay.
Yeah.
Any other cues, like how does it feel or sound when you feel like you've got a connection? Somebody else want to share?
Maybe you get to a consensus really quick.
Okay.
Quickly.
So good. So you're seeing it. Maybe you're it's easier to move toward consensus. What is conversation like when you have a connection with someone? Atik, did I say that right?
Yeah, correct. Thank you. My question was like a connection, as you said, the group of people, like usually we interact with the meeting and all. So how do we connect with all the people in a one time before the meeting?
Yeah, so especially when you have a group of people, here's a couple of cues on that with respect to connection. It depends on how frequently, if this is your first time communicating with somebody, especially in a group, is to do everything you can to build rapport. We're going to talk about how to do that here in just a minute. But I would also say that as you move through, maybe working on a project with a client, you'll start to notice those who are leaders on the call. And so I would say that would be the person you begin most trying to make that connection with. And especially if you know they're a decision maker that needs to be on board and you need that connection to be strong, that would be where you would start. In an overall sense, I want to talk about rapport building here in just a second. So here's what we know. Anybody define rapport for me? What does that even mean? What do I mean when I say you have rapport? Go ahead.
It's basically the history two people share between each other, the relationship.
Okay, good. It can be history, absolutely. So if you have some kind of a relationship, you've got rapport. Okay, so let me
common.
Things in common. That's a great way to build that rapport. We were just talking a minute ago, Kanika and I are both in Atlanta. So as we're chatting, we discovered that can start to, we have that in common. So that can start to become rapport building. Here's the stepping stones that when eventually we want to move over into relationship, it starts with something called rapport. Now we're going to take a little assessment here in a second, because rapport leads to connection. How important is having at least connection, even if you don't necessarily have a relationship with your client yet? How important is connection to the relation, to the whole communication process? Is it important? Does it matter?
I found that that having a connection allows you to convey your your thoughts and your ideas better,
Yes.
they're more well received if you have that connection already.
Yes. Kaylee, you want to add to that?
I think you also understand the person that you're talking to a little bit better whenever you have that connection. So not only can you communicate with them, but you can anticipate their needs better and all of that.
Well,
Actually,
okay. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, actually, one thing I found out is when you're going into something, before you have a connection, is having clear understanding are you presenting, what are you giving to this client. And it happened on multiple occasions. We get dropped in a meeting that we don't know exactly, we're just giving a general overview. Then we get surprised at the client say, but that's not what I'm looking for.
Right.
So having a kind of history and a background of what are you doing, who's the client, what their expectation, create that report and connection for you. And if the client see that, you immediately will create that connection.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So we're all in agreement. Connection's critical. Yeah. So now here's the deal. Can you get connection immediately?
So,
Give me a thumbs up if you think you can, or if you think, nope, takes more time than immediate.
no.
What do you think? Okay, I'm seeing more time. Okay. I agree with you. I don't think you can get relationship or connection immediately, but I do believe you can build rapport instantly. Have you ever been to a party or something like that, and you suddenly meet someone, or maybe even online, and it's like you have so much in common that you're like, oh, it's like I've known this person for years. Anyone ever experienced that? You're like,
Yeah.
you'd like them immediately. Okay, that can be rapport, and that can happen instantly with certain people, but connection and relationship takes time. Okay, now we just mentioned that it also sort of opens the doorway to stuff that you have to be able to share, some of which down the road might not be easy to share, right? I mean, as you work into the project, there may be things news that you have to share. So here's what you can just recognize. Connection is that ability you have to identify with people and relate to them in a way that increases your what? Your what? How important is influence for you as a consultant? How important is that?
It's very
100%.
important.
Super
Yeah.
important.
Kanika says super important. Michelle, what did you just say?
I'd say it's a key to gain the trust of the client as well.
So when several of you sent me feedback about areas of challenge, and this is the same exact, when I shared this information with your colleagues in Canada and in India, the notion of having somebody's respect, that they trust you, that they know you know what you're talking about, sort of building that sense of that you're the expert. Our goal is to be able to build that, starting with rapport, making connection, and ultimately having influence. So then when later you say, this is the direction I believe we need to go in, or these are the changes we need to make, they trust you because you have a connection with them and have built that influence. Now, let's just agree, influence also takes time. And so part of this is recognizing that all of our communication builds on itself. And really, we're all craving connection with each other. So how we do this in that work environment, especially in times when maybe you're about to talk to somebody you don't feel comfortable with, or you don't know very well, these are the things that the tools that I'm going to be sharing will help give you additional ideas that you could pull out. Almost like you have a toolbox you can pull out and go, all right, let's look, let me see if I can build influence in this way. And so here's what I want you to do. Please turn to the page that says page 3 on your screen. If you can look at it, it looks like this. It's got a little survey. Can everybody see that on your materials? Okay, so here's what you're going to do. You're going to go ahead and pull out your blank sheet of paper, and I would like you to answer these questions, yes or no. And really, it's an assessment of how naturally is this rapport building connection thing going for you. Now, here, thinkers, look here for a second. listen, don't overthink this, okay? Because nobody's going to look at the answers. So there's no right or wrong to it. This is just you and I assessing ourselves. Okay, so just go through their gut reaction. How do you think you're doing at it? Do you do it? Do you not do it? And at the end, we're going to look for, are there a couple areas that we would like to get better at, because we already know that's not as comfortable. Everybody with me on this? Okay, so let me go ahead and have you real quickly do that assessment on your sheet of paper, and we'll take a couple minutes to do it. Go ahead. When you've gone through them all and you're finished, just give me a quick thumbs up so I'll know you're done. As you're finishing, do pick out one that you think you'd like to improve on. So to look at that list, and what's one area that you could work on? Okay, wave your hand if you need just a little bit more time. No, we got it. Everybody good? Okay. I'm just curious. Anybody have any kind of ahas as you're answering these questions? Anything you notice just to answer them? Any of them stand out to you?
The one that stands out is the one that immediately understand what you say and mean. If people understand that, which is
That's a tough part, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, isn't that, I mean, that's probably one of the hardest things for every one of us to do, at least consistently. Now, here's the deal. You're already doing it. You're already doing it. The question isn't, can you do these things? Can you come across that way? But how consistently? Or if it's inconsistent, why? Is it certain types of communication? Is it certain types of individuals? What may be standing in your way to feeling consistent about these things? Because I know if you're like everybody else, some of you wanted to put the answer in the middle between the yes and the no. Did you not? Maybe sometimes. Okay, I know, but that's part of what we're trying to analyze in ourselves. We want to improve. Now, here's my question back to you about this whole notion of connection. So, and this is at the bottom. You can see this at the bottom of page 3. When you connect before you communicate, what does that do for the receiver of the communication? How does that benefit them if you connect first? Charles? Oh, wait, I can't hear you. There. Nope.
You know?
There it
Hear me
is.
now?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. The receiver is more likely to agree with whatever you're saying if they have a connection with you. Like they want to believe you first before you say anything.
Yes, yes. There, at least there, it's sort of, it opens the door. It sort of, smooths the path for them to want to hear you and listen to you. Okay, very good. Any other benefit to the receiver? When you
At least even if they don't agree, they more easily understand what you're trying to say.
Yeah. So if there's a connection and somewhat a willingness, right, to understand what you're saying, absolutely. All right. So, but what's the benefit to you? Let's just
The
lay it out.
support you get from them. I think you get their support. It give you that confidence to keep going.
Yeah. So the reason I'm
Also, I would like to add,
Yeah.
if you have a good connection, then you can ask like more detailed questions without giving them, make them feel uncomfortable, and also you can find an easy way to communicate with them. And when you have like a same language, or same, I would say language, not meaning like by actual language, but like same way to talk, then it's easy to move forward and get agreed on your side.
Yes.
And get done work on time.
Yes. And here's the ultimate thing about that. If you build that connection, you want them to see you as a human first, and then a consultant second. Because what happens is that then there is, and you know what this is like, when you know somebody really well, aren't there certain people that you can hear stuff from? Like you feel a connection with them and they could pretty much, you've given them permission pretty much to say whatever, be frank, and you can hear it from them, right? And then there are some other people that you don't have as good a connection with, that if they try to say the exact same thing, it's hard to hear it from them. Anybody? You know what I mean? Okay. So what we want to make sure is that they see us as a human being, that there's a feeling of connection, because the truth is sometimes you may have to ask for grace around something, like you need more time, or you need to, or oops, we made a mistake, or that when they see you as a human, this is true in customer service, this is true in so many realms, that then their ability to then want to hear you or problem solve with you increases exponentially. Are you with me? So that's part of just recognizing that connection is good for you and for them, and for something else too. And that's the message that you have to deliver. Whatever that is, your ability to recognize, you package it. When you're about ready to have communication with somebody, you're making decisions about how you package it, and then you send it off. And the whole thing about response is that if we get really good at packaging a message, sending it off, and then really paying attention to whether it got through or not, if it didn't, we can repackage it. If we say it's all them, then that's really hard to do. So our ability to kind of move back and forth is made so much easier when we have the beginnings of a connection. Ultimately, you might work with a client long enough where you feel like, hey, I'd love to go have a beer with this person. We become friends. Now you're in relationship. Prior to that, and most of the time, it's going to be seeking connection. So connection equals better communication, or at least it feels better, right? It's more enjoyable and more, they're more open. Everybody with me on that at that point? Okay, so now here's what I want to shift because people ask me all the time, okay, well, like, how do I repackage it? I mean, I don't know. I'm just communicating the way I communicate, and I put it out there, and it's really hard for me to know what's going to be received well. I want to give you some clues on this. So this is where, if you have the opportunity to open up that DISC assessment, I want you to do that. I also want you to keep some paper open, because I'm going to talk about these different communication styles. There's 4 of them, and I want you to capture as much information as you can. Now, on your workbook materials, you're going to see a place starting on page 5 of the materials for you to capture that, or just put it on a scrap sheet or a workbook piece of paper, because these are going to be telltale signs of the different ways you can adjust your communication to meet people where they are. Everybody with me on that? Good. Okay. So if you haven't had a chance, either open your DISC profile, that should have been a report you got, or turn to page 4 in your workbook materials as they come up. And let me just share with you what this is. Okay. How many of you have taken, if you didn't take DISC, have you taken like Myers-Briggs or other assessments? Who's done stuff like that? Okay. Let me just tell you something. This particular assessment, I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes I take these assessments and I'm like, don't pigeonhole me, right? I'm a unique individual. So please know that this assessment is variable. It depends. And so you're going to see lots of ways that this could apply differently. So I need your permission to make some sweeping generalizations. Are you okay with that? Yeah, everybody, can I have your permission? Because to understand these 4 styles, we're going to do some generalizing, but I want you to recognize that you're all of them. It's just you have a comfort zone in one or more of these styles, and the people you're talking to every day do also. And by going through this, you're going to try to find out where you sit comfortably and where other people you have to communicate with are naturally. Everybody with me? This is the reason we're doing this. And here's a couple of, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, no, I did mine late last night and I haven't received the link back to it with the results or whatever. So just FYI,
Okay.
I don't know.
I thought I sent that to you this morning, but let me, Mohammed, I will take a second here in just a moment. And
I'll check in case it went to spam.
If I may, check your spam. Most of the email I get from Jackie were in spam. That's how, even the attachment.
Oh, thank you. I bet you that's where the workbooks were too. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, the first email went there, and I think I got I did get it from you, Jackie.
Okay.
It was in spam.
Okay, so look in spam first, and you'll see if you took the assessment, I would have gotten a report and I forwarded you your results. If you didn't yet, again, it's okay. You still have that link. You can take it after today and benefit from it greatly.
Yeah, I did not receive.
And it did send there's another email with the documents, I think as of Wednesday or something, but because it was in spam, it doesn't show
the documents
until maybe you save it, like save, whitelist or something.
Yeah. Okay, good. All good to know. And I will talk to Amy also to see if there's a way that maybe I can send things to her and she can forward to you. And then that way that we won't have to worry about the spam. How does that work?
Maybe,
okay. Yeah, please.
Jackie, the best thing maybe. So all I want to say is to send your email in advance so people can whitelist it and look out for it.
Perfect.
Your email address in advance.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. So I want to go through some explanation first before we need the report. So while we're going through this, then I'll stop and take a second and we'll forward anything else. All right. So, and by the way, Mohammed, did you see in spam your report? Look there. Okay.
Yes, the report and the documents are there.
Okay. Excellent. Okay.
Yeah. Even I also receive, just now I've seen that in all of your email in the junk folder. So just I see those reports.
Thanks.
Yeah,
okay.
Just same here. Yeah, for me too. All the emails in the junk. Yep.
Yeah, same here also.
All right. Now, so again, hey, great feedback that response went there. So we'll find the best workaround for that. Okay. So let's talk for just a minute about this thing called DISC. Here's what it is. Is just trying to find out what are your behavioral tendencies, and then how can knowing these styles benefit you. But here's the best part of it. The more we understand that people communicate and relate differently, the more we really should be able to appreciate and respect each other. And I think that's part of what this explanation is going to be, and this DISC profile. It really is about saying, okay, I realize I tend to think everyone just communicates like I do, right? And then sometimes I get baffled that I'm missing communication because I'm thinking, oh, I couldn't have been more clear. And yet sometimes those still happen. Recognizing that we have different styles and then knowing what to do when you know you're communicating with someone who's different is the key to success here. So this is part of developing strategies. First, knowing where you are, okay, because that's going to be your point of departure, right? But it isn't about us as much as it is about you going, oh, wait a minute. Okay, I communicate with Fred over there and I can't, we seem to be out of sync. You'll have greater understanding after I explain all these, why you might not be hitting it all on all cylinders with Fred, for example. So I want to explain all these. I'm going to give you an overview and I'm going to ask you to capture some of the telltale signs about each of these styles. So more importantly, not only do you want to recognize them in you, but you're going to see them in other people by the description I'm giving. Everybody good? That's the reason we're going to be spending time on this. So here's the deal. What we started to notice is all over the world, everywhere, are patterns. And looking for patterns sends us to a greater understanding of what's going on. So different, through history, literally since the beginning of mankind, people have been trying to understand the patterns of style and of personality. But I got to tell you, personality is super complex. This profile is not a person, it's not like Myers-Briggs. That is much more of a personality profile that you pretty much are that your whole life. This is much more contextual. Depending on how you answer the questions, you may be a little bit different at work than you are at home. And in fact, when you open up your profile, you will see some charts, some graphs, and on those graphs, hang on a second, I'm letting Ian in, on those graphs, there's actually might be some differences based on whether you're seeing in your own self, whether you feel like you're at work and you need to communicate in a certain way, and what your true self is. So there may be some variation because personality, role model, personality is based on your background, your heredity, your experience, your environment, your role models. Hey, we are complex human beings. I'm just trying to find a few ways for us to simplify the differences. Does that sound good? Because that's really what understanding these 4 styles does for us. Okay, so let me go over a pretty quick overview, and then you're going to need to capture some of these details. So here's part of this. There are actually 4 quadrants, and I want to share with you how they're kind of measured when we explain the different styles of communication. So if you'll notice that it's on a measurable scale of outgoing, which are 2 dominant or influencing styles would be listed there, and reserved, which would be the steady and compliant styles there. Okay, so it's on this kind of a sliding scale of those 2 elements. It's also on a sliding scale right to left of task-oriented and people-oriented. Okay, so what happens is the red box there at the top that's D is going to be task-oriented but outgoing. All right, if you flip over to that other side, that influencing is going to be people-oriented and outgoing. So see how that quadrant, those 2 quadrants, and similarly at the bottom, task oriented and reserved will be more compliant, and people oriented and reserved is more steady. Okay, now see what, don't get hung up on the words that we're using to describe them. They're more complex than that. So I want to go over some descriptors. So please pull out your sheet of paper. And if you would like to make a square, draw a line and put these in 4 quadrants, you can do that. I'm giving you a little cheat sheet on it, but I find the more you can write some things down, the better. And so I'm going to do this in 2 passes. I'm going to give you a full description and then how frequently we see these styles. And then I'm going to give you some ways to communicate with each of the styles. All right, you with me? Everybody good? Okay, so let's go through D, D is going to be, now, did everybody remember, was D outgoing or reserved? Does anybody remember? Outgoing, yes. And were they more people or task? Task, good, yes. Okay, so here's the deal. Now, this is where I need your help generalizing. I'm gonna make some sweeping generalizations. The truth is, we are all four of them. Okay, but we tend to use those different styles based on what we think people need, and communication, it tends to be easier with certain styles for us because that's where we kind of naturally live. Okay, so let me go through. You ready? All right, here's the deal. Someone who has a high D, hang on a second, let me add somebody in, has a high D score, are driven by authority. They're multitaskers. They want results. They'll take control. You're on the phone with them and they'll come right on in. They also tend to like the big picture. They tend to go in sort of the macro. That's their thinking is big picture. And they tend to be very comfortable with risk taking and change. They kind of like that. They do, however, treasure loyalty amongst companies and amongst individuals. And one of their greatest fears, so if you were taking notes on your page 5 in your workbook, you can see their spots for all this. But one of the greatest fears, somebody who is a high D, these are likely heads of departments or CEOs or whatever, is being taken advantage of. Okay, so let me keep going, and I'm wanting you to pick out people you communicate with, clients or colleagues that might seem to have tendencies like this. So let me keep going. Okay, so here, all four of these styles have strengths and they have weaknesses. Let's just be real. So I want to talk about these so you can see them in action. Here we go. The strength of someone who has a high D, task-oriented, outgoing, they tend to motivate others. Really good in emergencies. Like they can get things done because they're bold and confident. They're decisive and goal-oriented. You can see the rest of those. They're comfortable in this leadership role and actually thrive when there's pushback. Like it doesn't intimidate them. They're like, ooh, that's a good challenge. Kind of like that. Okay. Any questions about their strengths? You got them? Okay. So here's the downside though. Every one of us, any of these styles has a little downside. Okay, because they are like go get results oriented, can seem a little inconsiderate or opinionated, maybe not very complimentary, and tend to maybe not apologize for something they might have said, and can seem insensitive or domineering and maybe a little impatient because they're results oriented. They're harder on themselves than they are on others, but sometimes they come across like they'll roll people over, and that's where that they can appear to be, taking over and can appear to be a little cold. Okay, so if you noticed, I forgot to tell you this, what the percent of the population was. Did you see that there? 3% of the population. Okay, now that's the description. At somewhere on that same page, would you write down anybody you know that you think resembles this in their communication style? Anyone you're working with? And is there's a client that seems to be a high D? Would you put, if you want to put initials to protect the innocent, feel free to do that, but go ahead, write them down because this is about you identifying them. Any questions about this so far? Can you tell a D coming? Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Is it important to just address somebody? Because I feel we shouldn't anyway to refer to anybody. For sure, we are facing people of the type. Yeah, but
well, don't call them a D. That's not what I mean. But what we're doing here in just a minute is we're going to figure out how do Ds want you to communicate with them? Because here's the deal. If you are speaking to a high D and you are not a high D, can you see how we can be like, whoop? And so the question isn't, part of this is you recognizing where you are naturally, but the question more will be, how can I alter the way I communicate to meet that D where they are? Even if I only do it for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or that phone call, how can I do that? Now I'm going to get back to how to communicate, but are you getting a gist of what this style is like?
Yeah.
Everybody knows somebody, yeah? Or many somebodies? Maybe you're married to somebody like that. Okay, you got that? Okay, all good. These are leaders. These are the ones we count on because they take risks. They see the big picture. We have to, and we'll talk about appreciation of all 4 of them. Okay, so you're with me. All right, let's go to the next one. The next one is called influencing or I. Okay, now this particular style, are they outgoing or reserved? What did we say? Anybody remember? They're outgoing. Okay, they're outgoing.
They're outgoing and oriented, both
toward people.
Toward people, yes.
Yes. So look, so they're not task like the D. They are more people oriented. And here's how this shows up. They tend to want to seek a friendly environment. They're usually moving a lot. They're relationship oriented. They also like the big picture. They kind of like to move fast and don't mind taking on risks, but they tend to be seen as more of a storyteller and encourager. You know, they kind of, they like the spotlight and thrive in that. And consequently, here's the greatest fear: rejection or loss of approval. Like, they tend to be more people pleasers, and so can be upset or worried if they have let somebody down. Everybody with me? 11% of the population tends to be in this style. And by the way, all those percentages are because every single time an assessment is taken, it's being calculated to see kind of what the population movement is in those. Okay, so let's go over their strengths. Remember, everybody's got them: strengths and weaknesses. Very social and spontaneous. People with a high I are really creative. They like to come up with new things. They like change a lot too, and sometimes they'll kind of move and do things to keep that churning. Can tend to be very likable and charming and fun because people know they're charismatic and enthusiastic, like to be around them, but they also like to talk a lot because they like to tell a story and are comfortable in that spotlight. Okay, so those are strengths. Here are some obstacles. Sometimes they need the spotlight. And if they're not getting enough of that, that can feel awkward, right? Now, because they're kind of woo and ideas and sharing and creative can sometimes not listen as well as they talk, and be a little bit fly by the seat of their pants. So that can tend to make them a little forgetful, or maybe they don't follow through on certain things. So they also can tend to talk too much, in which case sometimes when they're sitting down and chit-chatting before the day starts, and they can be easily distracted and maybe a little disorganized. Part of that also, and the optimism can cause them to say, oh, sure, I can do that by Friday, sure, and overcommit and then underdeliver, right? So that's a view of our high I. Everybody got it? So if you want to capture anybody you know in your sphere of influence at home or at work, who's that? Who might be a child of yours? Who is it that communicates kind of in that way? All right, everybody capture those names. Because again, I'm going to come back and give you how to communicate with them. All right, let's talk about S's. Now, we're moving down into the more reserved section here. These are reserved, but they're people oriented. They want a team. They want to be part of something, and they would like to be a part of it and stay a part of it for a really long time. They are the most loyal of all of our styles, and they're so good at listening. They know what people are going through in your department. They're the one who has their finger on the pulse of who's sick and what's going on and how are the families doing. They really like everybody just get along, kind of peaceful relationships. So when there's a loss of security or maybe a confrontation or somebody's raising their voice, that can get really uncomfortable. That's one of their greatest fears. But look at the percentage. By far the highest percentage. More people are in this category than any of the others. Now, remember, we're all of them. Okay, but you can see that steady is in most of our offices. Strengths, they love close friendships, they're faithful, they look for processes to find an easy way. They tend to be detail oriented, peaceful, routine oriented, hard worker, team. Look at all those things. Stable, secure, saver, all of that. Now, again, there's always an up and a downside. With S's, they also can want to stay the same so long when you ask them to change, or there's been a development and now you have to alter the plan that you gave them. That can throw them all off, right? And if you confront them, they'll shut down. So because of that, they're not very direct. And how it'll come out, like how you'll know you've upset somebody, is more that you'll hear like a snarky remark. There'll be a little sarcasm because they'll be more passive in their discontent than being straight up with you. And so because of that, that you might not hear directly what's going on, so they may not speak up. And if you know there's change, give them a very long on-ramp. One more obstacle an S tends to need help with is because they are people pleasers and they want to be the best support person ever, they don't say no very well. And so sometimes can become overwhelmed and overloaded because they just keep saying yes. And what happens a lot of times is, even at a company, they'll just get burnt out and leave. And you may not even know what happened. So we want to stay in communication with those S's. Yes, Barrel.
One quick question, I don't want to stop you, but so this type of person, right? If they are not talking too much, if they are calm, they're settled, basically they're like a long run type of people, who can work like, in same position or like for a long time, and they're very loyal, right?
Yeah.
And then you mentioned that you will show us or tell us like how to communicate this type of people, right?
Yeah.
But my question is, if this person serving the client, how they will build the connection with the client, because client don't know he's a quiet or like he just want to have his own way to go. How they will build the connection with the client?
Yeah, well, Barrel, thank you for that question. The truth is, doesn't matter whether you're an S or an I or a D. If we want to build a connection with that client, if we want to get the response we're looking for, it is our job to leave our style and move closer to them. Okay, so I'm going to give you the how-tos. Now, listen, here's the deal. Does anybody know Jerry Martin? Okay. So here's the deal. When I go through these, I want you to guess what you think he is, because how he operates at work is very different than how he operates at home. All of us can be outside of our style for our entire work life, but we just need a break. Like it may mean you need to go rest afterwards. You make these adjustments all the time. You make them when you go to family, and somebody in the family communicates differently than you. You make them at the grocery store. You do this naturally, but I want you to become super intentional, especially when you have a client that is different than you are. And then you're like, oh, I don't even know what to, we seem to do this. What do I do? That's what this is about. So us recognizing, I'm more concerned, Viral, that if you're a D and you're talking to a client who's an S, and that you're rolling them over, right? And they're not feeling connected to. So it's up to us to make that adjustment. Does that answer that a little bit? Okay. Because we're going to get to where you're headed already. Any questions about an S? Let's go through the last one and then we'll come back.
Yeah, Jackie, you did mention Jerry Martin. I worked with him. So in fact, I did. I worked with him a long time back, but I did rate him. I know he's very funny, witty, and then he has a lot of knowledge. I definitely rate him as an I.
Yes.
I.
Yeah. You are.
Yeah, me
right.
too.
You all think he's an I? Okay.
Yeah.
Good. I'll tell you what he is naturally when we get done. Okay, hold on. All right, let's go to the last one here. This is our C. Now, don't let the word compliant fool you. What this means is that they are conscientious and accurate. They are reserved, but they're task oriented. Okay, so someone has a high C is detail oriented. They are perfectionists. They want it to be done right. And because they are so much in that like task, more introverted, and they want to be right with what they're doing. When they feel like they aren't, or they're being criticized, that can really bother them. 17% of the population has a high C, and my guess is it's much higher in technical organizations, even like yours. Right? If you're doing technical work frequently, developers, etc., tend to gravitate a little because of their natural style of wanting to dig in there and work on something for a long time, and that's super comfortable. You might find a higher percentage in your organization that might have a C tendency. Okay, so let's look at their strengths. Super persistent. I mean, they will get it done, right? Analytical, planning, finish what they started, data-driven. Look at all those. Deep thinker. How do you like the second bullet in the second column? Genius, bro, right? Orderly, organized, logical, all of that. Everybody with me? Can you think of people, or maybe you are people that works like that, communicates like that? Right, got it? Okay, so let's talk about the downside though. Obstacles are, in some ways, working in a group isn't as comfortable. They'd rather go, I'll get back with you, and they want to work alone. Because perfectionism is part of this, they can often be a little slow to get things started and suffer from analysis paralysis. Anybody? Anyone? Anybody? Okay. Perfectionism, they really don't like risks. You know, those D's can have all the risk they want, but listen, part of what many times C is tasked with minimizing risks, because they want to try to not have that. But consequently, they are so deep in the details, they may miss the big picture. And because they're so in that, can seem a little moody and critical, rigid, legalistic, you know, really over analyzing. Again, harder on themselves than they are on others, because they want to do it right. Okay, so who do you know that has that style? Write their name down. If you know anybody, clients or colleagues that you know, this is important for them, okay? Now, so we got all 4 styles. I want to just for a second spend a moment talking about the fact that your report, and I'm really, because some of you have it and some of you don't. I want you to, I think it's on page 4, for those of you who do have your report, are 3 graphs. Does anybody have that open? Michelle, I'm seeing you're looking at your screen. Do you have it? Okay. Am I right on page 4? Where there are 3 graphs? Okay, excellent. And could you read just real quick what each of those 3 graphs says that it is? It's got a little title to it.
You can hear me?
Yes, great.
Okay. So graph 1 represents your public self, or the mask. Do you want me to read what's underneath?
And then what's graph 2?
Okay, graph 2 represents your private self, or the core. Graph 3 represents your perceived self, or the mirror.
Okay, so here's what, when you have your report in front of you next. So what I'm going to do, part of your homework will be to read through this. But I want you to look at those 3 different graphs, and listen, there's no magic to all of this. You answered the questions. But they've been literally doing DISC for 45, almost 50 years. And what they've started to notice is that if you were going to graph this out, you'd be somewhere in the middle of all 4 of those. But us understanding that many of us communicate a little differently than we naturally are, because we know the job requires that. So that outside graph might be, that first one might be a little different. That next one is who you know you are. And then that last one is sort of your personal self. It really is recognizing that there may be some differences in those 3 graphs. Now, the truth is, some of them may be identical. And that's actually a really good thing, because it means you're doing something, you're in a role that allows you to be true to your own personal style. That makes sense? Everybody with me on that? Okay, so just FYI, if you were to look at Jerry Martin's, that outside one, he definitely would be an I with a D in there, but he's naturally a C. right? He wants to get in and dig in and fix stuff and problem solve, and he'd love to go right in that. And so, but he knows that his role takes him being outside and with people, and so he uses humor.
Yeah, that's what he's very, very outgoing and uses humor a lot, and then he's very, very, I mean, dominant. And then I can say he does his work very well. So I was thinking he's in a high, but didn't realize that he falls under C. So
yeah, well, so here's all I'm trying to say. You're all of them.
yeah,
All of them. The question is, what are you going to use to help you communicate with this person that you're trying to communicate with? And us being able to, first thing is just being aware of these differences. But the second piece I want to go over is, how do we alter our communication with those different ones? Now, let me, before we go into the how do we alter, can we just say we absolutely in every workplace have to have all the styles. If we do not have all the styles, can you see we're going to miss something? Like, what if you had an entire department and it was all C's? What would happen?
you won't have any leader. So,
Yeah, you could get something done, but you may never finish it, right? Because it's never quite good enough. What if you had all D's?
Nobody would do the work.
Yeah, yes, that's exactly right. No one's to delegate to, and there'd probably be a lot of like, that kind of thing. But you see eyes now. If you had a whole room of eyes, they might have a lot of fun, but no work could get done there either. Yeah. So you get the gist. We need all of us. So this is really about you and I recognizing these differences as something to appreciate. Like, I love to be able to express, and when I have a team of people that I work with, and I get it. My C is the one who will tell me things nobody else will say. They'll be the one in the back of the room going, I don't think that's a good idea. And I'm like, oh, and I might not want to hear that, but I have to. So when we are thinking about what to appreciate, we need to all be surrounded with the variety of styles. Now, if you want to perfect how to alter your communication, here's where I want you to go back. Now, wherever you wrote your notes on D, flip back to those. Okay, and here's what I want you to capture. Now, I have written some of this stuff down for you. It's coming in your workbook. So, but I know it's kind of nice when you write some things down, capture these things. I'm going to do this for all 4 styles. If you are about to get on a call and that person is super dominant, they're outgoing, they're straight, no nonsense, get to the point. Here's what you want to do to alter your communication. Okay, everybody good? All right, here we go. Number 1, be brief, direct, to the point, then leave. You with me? Get in, get out, say it, and then end. So they don't want the details. They don't want to know why it's going to work. They don't want to hear all the background of the story about how you got to this conclusion, C's and I's. They don't want to know that. Just get in, say it, and go. The questions you want to ask are what or how. Everything else is a detail. What do you want done? How do you say, I'm sorry, you want what questions, not how questions. How is the details? What do you want? What's this going to look like? How, what's it going to take to make you happy? What? Because that's where they live in that big picture. How? Gonna be with other people. But for the D, they don't care about how. I don't care. Just get it done, right? Focus on the results. Here's how it's going to look when it's finished. We're going to be able to do this. This process is going to be easy for you. We're going to minimize our calls. You with me on D? Okay, don't ramble. And sometimes that's easier said than done. Or you may be thinking, yeah, but this piece of information is so important. But if you're not a D, it probably isn't to the D. So discuss a problem. Even if you have a problem, they're the ones that can hear it straight up. I love communicating with Ds because honestly, you don't need to worry about hurting their feelings. They don't care. They're just, get it done. Tell me what the problem is. What are the outcomes and how are you going to fix it? Or what are you going to do? That's it. Oh, here's one other thing. If you're emailing a D, bullet points, probably 3, no more. They're not going to read anything deeper than that anyway. Give them 3 points and you're out of there. Everybody with me? Short, sweet, to the point, results oriented, D. Any questions about communicating with a D? You got that. D. I know you guys know this. The question is, how consistently are you doing it? And especially if you feel rocked back on your heels because the person like communicates differently and you don't feel like you have a connection. Okay, here we go. At I don't do all the talking. Because why? Because who likes to talk? The guys do, right? So let them share their ideas. They want to tell a story. You have to, especially for those of you who are more direct, you're going to have to sit back for just a minute and let them talk for a second. At the beginning of your conversation, allow time for socializing. What do I mean? George, what do I mean?
Yeah, yeah, meaning that you give them some space to express the thing that they like more, which is socializing and tell a story. So in such a way, they feel even more comfortable.
Right. And
Yeah.
let them chat. How'd your weekend go? What was your holidays like? You know, that kind of, that social connection. Listen, if you're talking to an I and you jump right to the details, how will they respond? What'll happen to connection?
They like the details. They like telling a story with its details and what they do exactly. And when they wanted to a trip, they do 1, 2, 3, and they found the strangest stuff and passed by situations. So you need to give them some space.
Yes. Everybody
Yeah.
with me on that? If you
Right.
don't, can you see how that can disrupt connection? They don't feel
Yeah.
like they care about that. Okay, so good. Now, here's one thing we know: eyes are talkers, and sometimes they overpromise and underdeliver because they're just thinking so quick. So follow up. If ever there was a time you needed a follow-up email, which I know you probably already send regularly, if they're with an I, if they just said they do this, this, and this, you send them immediate email and say, great conversation, loved hearing about your dog. Here's what you just said you do. Okay, you with me on that? Okay. Here's one other thing. 4 short 10-minute discussions are better than 1 40-minute discussion. Okay, short, brief, you're good. Any questions about an I? Okay. Communicating with an S. Here's a couple of things. Same thing as an I, they're much more people oriented. So make sure you have a really friendly tone. So D's and C's, watch that you're not too abrupt. So creating that friendly tone, ask them about them, show that you respect them or are interested in them as a person. Watch that you don't jump too quick in a, this is what we have to do. And this is what, be a little softer approach and minimize any kind of feeling that there might be confrontation. But they do live in the details. Define what this means to everybody. Like in the beginning, when I was talking to you about, okay, here's our goal, here's what we're going to do, trying to share those details. If you happen to be an S, that's information that you'll want to know. Okay, now, if you're sending an email to an S, you can get a little more detailed. But also, how does this impact everybody? And by learning this, we're all going to be able to get along more. Okay, questions about S? All right. Oh, yes. And if you know a change is coming, now listen, this is real important. If you're talking to a client who happens to be an S, if you know change is coming, know that likely you're going to get first. Okay. Now they'll warm up to it, or if you can give them notice that I think maybe something is going to have to, tell them 3 or 4 times, listen, it's coming, but it won't be for another month. And if you can give them a long on ramp to a change happening, that's much better because their natural tendency is to resist change. Okay, so don't overreact. If they go right away, just know that's natural. They'll come along if you stay in connection with them. Okay, last one, let's go to C's. Details. Details, please. Provide those details and as many validated facts as possible. Yes? Make sure that when you're explaining, don't use a story. Give them the details in precise explanation, and as specific as you possibly can. And now remember, these are your deep thinkers. So just know that you may have to be patient because you're going to, they need time to percolate and think about the ideas, the questions, or any follow-up that needs to come after it. But similar to a D, when you send an email, bullet, 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 but here's what I would do. Then bullet, 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 and then go into all the detail. They want that piece. The D's are like, nah. But C's want to know, okay, so what made you come to that conclusion? Go ahead and bullet it. Here's one other thing, and it's not listed on here, but write it on your sheet there. Because C's suffer from analysis paralysis, if you're going to give them tasks, put deadlines. So you're going to have to say, that's good enough. We got to call the ball here. That's it. Wherever that iteration is, that's the deadline. You with me on that, everybody? Okay, so those are the ways we can.
Jackie, one question before we go. I know we're talking about communicating to each of the personalities, but in a group, I know we have all these personalities together. So is there any suggestion when you're trying to reach out to a group, to a client with all these personalities in place? So any comment?
Okay, now this is going to be a little bit like, what? I'm going to ask you to do them all. In other words, people will listen to you when they know the information's coming to them in the way they can hear it. So here's how I normally do it. Start out direct and with the big picture. So your D's and your I's start into the big picture. You can tell a little bit of a story of it, but once D has what they need, doesn't matter if they check out because you've covered their piece. You want to tell a little bit of story and then move into how it affects people. That starts to bring in the S. And then when you make it to, okay, so let me go over the exact and precise details and the expectations, that pulls your C's in. Now, pay attention to who the leader is. So if that person needs it in a particular way, then you just want to keep defaulting back to that. So that's part of what I'm recognizing is that if you can cater, if you're going to cater to one of the four, go where you think the leader needs you most. But then if you could stop and hit what the others will need to hear a little bit at least, that works.
Yep.
That makes sense? Okay, now this sheet here is on, I would suggest you print this. Right, print it off of your, it's all four of them, their key characteristics and their preferences. Okay, so this is kind of a cheat sheet for what we've just gone through. Now, we didn't cover what you are, but does anyone, if you did your assessment and you have it pulled up, if you're looking at that graph, I'm talking about which one had the highest peak. That one, put a circle by that or look at that. Does anybody want to share just real quick what you ended up with on your profile?
Yeah.
Okay, Kaylee, let's have you start.
I am most definitely a C, but I'm also definitely a D too.
Okay, so you got that task orientation there. So starting with the C and moving to the D. Yeah, did anybody have them really close together? Because a lot of people will get them super close together. Okay, who was next? George?
I did.
Oh, yes, Charles, go ahead.
It said I am a C and an S plotted above the middle line.
Okay, excellent. So you've got that more reserved style, but more on the task oriented first with the backup of people, right? And listen, again, we're all four of them. And all of us can be all of them if the job requires, right? So, but to know that that's where you're coming from, that's good to know. Somebody else want to share?
Yeah.
Yeah.
More C and less D and S.
Okay, so C is your predominant one, though, correct?
Yeah, combined one.
Okay.
Yeah, and D somehow, because even my role required that as a team lead, and also S, but mainly from top to down, C, D, and S.
Okay, very good. Anyone else want to share?
Yeah, I definitely in the camp of S.
Yes.
And then to some extent, I not definitely D.
Okay, okay, very good, very good. Now, let me just say something here. Again, we're all four of them. Here's what I want us to recognize too. Some of us might be, really high on a particular one, and you think, well, how do I act like one of these other styles if I'm way over here? The truth is, maybe you don't. Maybe you partner with someone who has a high complementary style, right? And you tag team. You do one piece because that's where you live, and they do another piece because that's what's natural for them. That's okay too. It's just you have to recognize it first, where you are and where they are, and that appreciate that our ability to flex is what we're going for here. Now, I know several of you may not even have yours yet. So between now and next time, what I will do is I'll get on the call a little early next time, and maybe we can talk some more about the different styles, because I want to move on to one other quick point as we move into our last little bit of time. Okay, the point with all of this is it's our ability to flex that matters. And our recognizing you already do it all the time. You just may not know you're doing it. You know how it is. There's sometimes people you're around who are more quiet. And even if you're maybe more extroverted, you tend to chill out and sit down and more quiet. Or when you're with that friend who's like, oh, and they're loud, and you tend to be more like them when you're around them. That's you. What we need to do more of it is in the workplace. And so part of that I want us to recognize now, looking at, as we move to, hang on a second, I'm catching up with the pages, page 11, just real quick. I want you to look at the fact that we use communication in 3 different ways. And this is where we also want to spend just a moment talking about, regardless of your style, look at this. When it comes to communication, only 7% of communication is the words we use. 93% is either the way we say things or the nonverbal way, either that body language or our the way something looks. Did anybody mind blown by that? So here's what's dangerous then. When we send an email, if the power of communication is in the nonverbal and in the sounds, and we're sending communication, now this is what we were talking about earlier, when you were talking about texting and emailing, we don't have anything except the words. And so it's no wonder our communication can often be misconstrued or can be more difficult because we're using such a minute type of communication based on all that we have at our disposal. Does that make sense? So if we're looking at the page, you can see that they're actually, check this out. When we have our, there's our 7% is our message. Those are the words, the tone of voice and body language is really doing the talking for us. When we're virtual, this is what I want to focus on between now and when we're finished, is we're also a little bit without some of the tools that we have. So I want to dig into just a minute about these tools. They're either paraverbal, that's the way we sound. They're nonverbal, that's the way the message is delivered visually, like body language or in writing. And then there are the words. So let me talk about each of these 3, and then we're gonna look at something. Here's the deal. When you and I are on the phone, this is part of the paraverbal. How we sound matters. Now, there's technology. We need to be sure we have a good mic, all of those kinds of things. But if you were saying, remember I said everything communicates? If somebody's like going, what does that communicate?
Exasperation.
Bored.
Or maybe they're nervous. But do you see how it could be misconstrued as bored or as all of those kinds of things, or tired or out of breath, or all of those things, clearing our throat, clicking, certain words we emphasize, all of those types of things communicate something. So we have to kind of pay attention to that. I actually was working with a group in Canada, and one gal is on there. She's relatively new, but she said when she gets nervous, she laughs. So what does laughter, maybe at not quite an appropriate time, what does that communicate?
A lack of seriousness.
Yeah. Now she wants to be taken seriously. She wants to be trusted and seen as an expert. And that one parallel language behavior, she knows about it. It's causing some issues for her. So we just need to recognize, is there anything we do? Maybe it's not having eye contact. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So let me just stick with the vocal part. Some of you are more good at projection in your sound, and some of you are more soft spoken. But here are some things I just want you to recognize. The tone that you use matters. It conveys the emotion that you have. And so when you're relaxed, when you're confident, it comes across in your tone, but it also comes across in your volume. Somebody's really quiet and they're talking a little bit like that, or it's hard to understand them. Like, what does that communicate? Some of you are going like, but do you see how even volume can make a difference? Here's a couple other things. How quickly you speak. Now, I get it. Sometimes we're thinkers. And listen, I live in the Atlanta area, so I kind of live in the South where people talk really slowly. And so if I talk too fast, like if I talk to them and that's not the way they talk, and I'm really going fast, what do they start thinking about me? What do you think?
You've
If I'm talking
had too much coffee.
Yeah.
You might be awkward.
Yes. Like if I'm talking too fast or even too slow, like if I talk too slow, sometimes people get like, they don't know what they're talking about. So pace matters. The other thing that matters is sort of pausing, and it is okay for us to stop for just a minute. The client asks us a question, and we're like, in our head, we're going, yeah, how to answer that. But if you sit back, let me consider that, and I'll get back with you. That pause, even though in your head you're going, it comes across as thoughtfulness and really searching for an answer. So you see how even something as what might seem innocuous as tone and our voice, way we communicate makes a huge difference. Now, when we practice next week, there'll be one of the things we're listening to with each other. How can we use tone? The other thing that's at our disposal is nonverbal communication. So I'm talking about gestures. I'm talking about posture. I'm talking about whether you're looking directly or as close to directly in the camera as you possibly can. And by the way, did you know there's a new app that causes, like, you see how my camera's actually here, which kind of puts it up above, but there's a new app. Did y'all read this? That can move your eyes to the camera. Not literally, but it shows as if your eyes are turned and you're looking directly at the camera. I'm a little creeped out by that, but
I could see the glitch just making my eyes go like some weird way or something like that, and then really start confusing people.
But what does eye contact convey?
Everything.
Yeah. What
you're
is
paying
that you're
attention,
focused.
that you care.
Yeah. Wait,
You're
what was that last
engaged.
part? Yes, that you're engaged, that you're paying attention. George, you were going to add? What was that?
Yeah,
Some people say trust. I'm sorry.
Trust, absolutely. Okay, so here we go. Since we went virtual a few years ago, and you guys were virtual before that, just look at this, for example, a group of what would be a common looking kind of group of people who are listening. Look at the guy in the top corner, the bottom corner over there. I get it. Sometimes we have to kind of do this, but look at the difference between the woman that's at the very top with the purple bar below, and she's kind of looking straight at us, versus one of the other folks that's way off center. Even how we place ourselves and whether we're sitting up, it matters, especially if you're trying to communicate, I've got something of importance to convey to you. That can matter. Like sometimes when I sit up and even lean forward, I can actually see you doing something similar. If we were in person, that would be true, right? We would kind of be mimicking each other. So where you sit and how you're looking, and whether you do, and if you'll notice, can you see my gestures?
Yep.
Okay, so first off, I'm 100, Italian, so, okay, but do you all gesture normally? Yeah, you do. And so it's so important for you to use that body language to connect. So let me give you a couple of things. Pay attention to how you see yourself on the screen. If you look at these faces, they've also centered themselves. Be aware of your posture and sit up straight. Now, you may be going, yeah, but we're not usually on camera. If I were you, I would always be on camera. If you're the one who wants to deliver the message that has that, trust building, connection building opportunity, even if you don't have to be, even if they're not, I would just recommend that. And pay attention to how you come across. Watch if you do too much of this, because what's that do? What's that do? What does gestures to your face communicate?
It shows nervousness and anxiety.
It does. So just, keep your gestures up where they can see it, but look at the camera as much as you possibly can, or at least in the direction of the screen, and pay attention to your expressions. People pick those up. Now, there's a couple of you that I'm not seeing your whole great looking face. So if you can, because that way, when you make an expression, they can see it fully, right? And just be mindful of what your hand gestures are doing. And I've gotten used to it so much now. I'm doing them over here, where normally if we were together, you might not see them, but I've got them to where you can see it. Just emphasizes. Yes, Byron.
But sometimes, we take notes and also like a multiple screen.
Yes.
While you have to check because you are supporting multiple client, right? We need to keep in mind and make sure that, sometimes the high priority emails you get, and definitely, you need to make sure that just follow 2 screen or 3 screen, whatever screen you have. And the question, the big one I have, mostly the camera is on your laptop screen, but most of I'll talk about my situation. Sometimes I have a laptop in like a front, sometimes I have on side because of the 2 screen, right?
Yes.
So because in more work, you need a big screen, because then you can read and you can, work easily than laptop small screen, right?
Right.
So that's something, I wanted to make sure that, because this screen, the PowerPoint you have right now, I can see that lady, she's using 2 hand and try to, communicate and make sure that she understand, and she's providing like 100%, attention.
Mm-hmm.
But in our situation, on my situation, because I have a multiple screen and also the laptop, position wise, right? That will be a big challenge to make sure that, just watch only straight forward in one screen.
Okay, so two answers to that. Number one is, first off, whatever you're doing right now works beautifully. Your communication with us is straight on, doing exactly what we're talking about. But now here's the deal. If you have any control over a camera, or having that, or put your laptop up high or something that could go to where it can set you up for success, I recommend you do that. If you can't, then what I would do is move to talk to the client as if you're in person. Like if you were in person and you really needed to take notes, you would look at the client in person, and then you would go to your notes, and you would probably say, let me capture some notes here, because I really want to make sure I get down everything that we're talking about. And they give you permission, because you've made the connection first, to do that.
Okay.
But come back to it, because it's as if they're there in the camera. So I would see if there's any way to put it together so that, I know you've got bunches of screens, but if you can have that camera placed somewhere that sets you up for success. But if not, just as if they were sitting where that camera is and you want to make a connection, stop for a second and communicate just the way you've been doing.
Okay.
And then say, listen, I need to take some notes. I want to do that. So I'm going to be paying attention, if you don't mind, here. Or I need to type some things. If they hear click, 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 you know what that is, and know that I'm capturing all that. You see how that, then they get it, and they realize, instead of feeling like you've broken connection to do something else, they feel like they're part of it. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yep.
Yeah,
My
Michelle, go ahead.
laptop, I have two large screens in front of me,
Yes.
and with all the cables and cords and connections, I can't physically move the laptop to be right in front of me, and it would be in the way as well, because I also
Yeah.
have space limitations on my desk.
So-
So what I do is if I need to be on camera, especially if I'm going to be talking, if I'm mainly taking notes, I don't worry about it. But if I'm going to be talking and taking notes, I'll tell them my laptop and my camera is to my right. My notes are right in front of me. And so if I'm talking, I'll usually look straight at the camera. But if somebody else is controlling the screen and they're asking me questions, I really have to go back and forth because I don't want to put the screen on the laptop. I want it in front of me because it's bigger and I can see more, but I still just try and move back and forth and just, stare at the camera sometimes. Even if I'm listening to them, if I'm not having to take notes, I'll look at the camera. But
Yeah.
I usually will just tell people at the beginning of the project, my laptop's on my right. I have two large screens in front of me. So I'm not going to always be looking directly at you, and people are fine with that.
Yes. Well, and you're doing the exact right thing right now. You've turned to me. And I feel like she turned to me. Isn't that funny? She turned to all of us because I felt a connection, right? So that eye contact, that moment, even if it's only for a few minutes, just exactly the way you're looking right now, that's it. So just be aware. It's as if they're sitting in the room with you, and that you would never be completely over to one side and be able to retain a connection. So wherever you decide that camera needs to go, and sometimes you don't put it on, I get that. But just recognize then you need to use additional tools to make sure you're building that rapport with people. Atik, what?
Yeah, sometime in the meeting, I stand up like now, I stand up and doing the meeting. So is that affect during this, communication? I mean, in the meeting, I stand up and communicate with the
Hearing-
client. So will it be a negative impact?
Okay, say that one more time because I didn't hear the beginning part.
Well, in the meeting, sometime I stand up and discuss. Like currently, I'm stand up and delivering other things. So will it be okay, or is there any problem?
Standing up is great. What standing up does is make your posture go up, but it also can keep your energy up. So I love that. If you have a desk that can raise up and you want to give that, I've got your full attention, standing is fabulous. Whatever it is that sort of puts you facing forward. Yes, go ahead.
I was going to say, I've been on meetings with Atik, and whenever he's standing, to me, it almost seems like he's the most attentive person in the room because he's on his feet.
That's right. That's right. Hey,
to me, it's harder to not pay attention when you're on your feet.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But it also sends a message. Remember, everything communicates. And so the question is, how important are all of these things? Are they critical? Are they important to the message itself? They're the delivery system. So I want to just spend one more moment on a couple of things with visuals, and then I want to go over our homework. Here's the deal. The visuals that you're going to be using when you make, anytime that you're using when you make your presentations, I've given you a checklist. This should have been the second thing attached to the thing that went to spam, but it's a PDF that says Hitachi Solutions virtual presentation checklist. Really goes over some ideas for what you need to be looking at with your chat. I want to roll over a couple of things. Here's what we know. If you have really good visuals, now you may end up with your screen wee little, or maybe you're not on screen, then anything they're seeing, especially if you're making a discovery presentation or you're going to be showing them timelines and things like that, they need to be top notch because they're doing the communicating for you. So let me just say, if you have a visual 60,000 times faster processing than text, look at all of the ways the brain and the eye and all of that is taken in and how much people remember when they see something. So I want to give you just a couple of examples. Here's one rule of thumb. I love this. When you make a presentation, no more than 10 slides, no longer than 20 minutes, no smaller than 30-point type. Now, I got to tell you, some of the stuff that I've already shown you is a little bit smaller, so that all depends. But I want to give you a couple of examples. These are some visual rules and some examples of things that, hey, come here for a sec.
Okay.
You just have some buddies on the call. Just a moment here.
Hello, everyone.
Some of you may know me.
I may know some of you.
Yeah, do you remember me?
Who is that?
Sushil?
Hey, Sushil, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Jerry?
Good. Well, I'll let you guys get back to it. I just want to
All right.
bring her a cup of coffee.
Wasn't that nice? How about that? Okay, so let me just go over some rules of thumb. Use more visuals and less text. Listen, I sat through these again over the last few months, and a lot of data, a lot of information. We'll talk about that. So more visuals, less text, simplify your data, especially when you're talking to somebody who's not a technical professional. And here's a suggestion. I'm going to show you an example. Share one idea per slide. Now, Jerry gave me permission. He showed me some slide, and I haven't given him this feedback, so that's coming next. Here was one of the slides that he showed me. He's going to be showing to a client. Okay, anybody feedback based on what we just talked about? First off, does it look familiar? Anybody? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
lots
go
of
ahead.
text.
Okay, Kanika, what do you think?
So,
Yeah,
Lots
there's a
of
lot of text and it's small.
yeah.
Yeah, Kaylee, what were you?
Way too many ideas on here too.
Yeah, you're
And-
really asking people to be patient to like read through all of that, and you don't want to read it. Last thing we want to do is read our slides. Okay, go ahead, Kaylee. You're going to add to that.
I feel like whenever you have all this on your slide, they're not listening to you. They're now reading. So,
Exactly.
So
No
you
visuals.
you've distracted
was-
yourself. Yeah, go ahead.
Mhm.
When I was
Actually-
in I'm sorry.
No, go ahead,
Go
Michelle.
ahead,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. So
When I was
Michelle,
in-
which
Michelle Lewis first, and then Michelle, you're next. Okay, go ahead.
When I was in graduate school, we had to take a it was kind of like it was just for like one credit, but it was a part of what they talked to us about was how to give a presentation.
Mhm.
And they told us when you have a slide with text on it, regardless of how much text it is, most people are going to start reading the text. And so they would tell us, things like 3-4 bullet points and only so many words per bullet point. And
Yeah.
don't read the slide yourself. Just, you should know the information well enough to just summarize. The bullet
Yeah.
points are really there just to help you remember to talk about the details. And so you tell them the details, you just highlight information with the bullet points. So this would most likely be better if they were at the very least broken into 3 separate slides.
Maybe like that.
Yeah.
Okay, and even that's a little too much. Like I would almost just go through it and do the headings perhaps, but it's better, yes? I mean, because look back at that. And then, and then that. So I just took one of the segments and spread that out. Yeah. Michelle,
And
what else did you want to say?
This Michelle?
No. Were you done? Michelle, was there anything else you were going to share though, Michelle Lewis? Hang on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, even if I don't have, like for something like this, you're not really going to have like a chart necessarily, but I'll sometimes just pop in like little graphics just to give the eye something more than, it's basically the same effect as a chart. Like if you have a little graphic of people around sitting at a desk or whatever.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be real people, but just a little drawing, the little, I forget what they call them, but something like that. It helps.
Yes.
To give people a visual, even though it's not an actual chart with data associated with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Michelle. Okay. Now the other Michelle.
Oh, if you can go back to the slide before, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Hang on. There you go.
So you see, if I'm doing this, the repeating objective, it can become annoying in my mind. What I will put is, I will highlight exactly the objective. So when I'm looking, if client looking, maker enablement, my objective, Power Platform, legal solution, program, citizen development. When you're looking at this, you need those that pop up in front of you. Your message is what you highlight.
Yes. Yeah. So there's lots of ways you can do that. You can highlight literally with color. You could do a click. You could do a little red arrow. You could do, I mean, there are lots of animations that keep the listener busy, that allows them to stay connected. Now, let me give you a few more tips, because you guys I know you know this already, but next week when we're together, let's see if we can try some of these on our presentations. Truly, most of us are, as we're aging, struggle to see things. Bigger fonts. Bigger is and fewer of them. If you want to draw or do something on, you could do some kind of little thing. Again, a little something animation that moves things around just helps people. So here's another example of a slide that was part of Jerry's slide deck. Now, here's the deal. This is better because there's color and it's divided, but still pretty small. And so all I did was make it bigger. But even that makes it a little more interesting, although you really could take the central document repository and make it its own slide, the next one its own slide, the next one its own slide. It is better that you have a few more slides and they cover less than too much on one. Does that make sense? Here's another example. This one I think is great. I know it's pretty simple. You might want something to add a little pop of color or a picture. A picture of a person or something if you felt like it. But honestly, this is pretty clear. And especially if, and this was a screenshot, so I don't have animation, but especially if you said the first one showed up and you talked about that, you click the second one shows up and you talk about that. So we all know this. It's just sometimes we get into okay, I've got so much I want to share that it's harder to parse it all out. We want to overload slides. But do you see how everything communicates? And non-verbally, maybe words don't matter as much, but how we use the words we do use does matter. And so just a couple other quick tips on that. This is all about keeping things simple. Be concise, to the point. It is better that you say less and are close, deep into one point than try to cover too much. Bullets are great. Use them as much as they are appropriate. Now, here's the other thing. Everything we just talked about, I know we went really quickly through it. Everything we just talked about with respect to the disc styles. Know who you're talking to. If you stop for just a second, and actually in some companies that do this within the company, they take the DIS and they put it up on their cubicle, like when they're all in the same office, because you start walking in, you stop and you go, okay, hold on a minute. I'm about ready to talk to a D. Let's see what I got to do. It's a reminder that helps you go, okay, I need to put this in the way that has the best chance of getting the response I want. That's why it's so important for us to alter that. Don't just rely on tone. Be as clear as you possibly can be. And here's one just really good rule of thumb. Let somebody else look at it. If you're not quite sure, and maybe somebody who you think is a similar style to the person you're communicating with, send it to them and go, did I say this in a way that you think, could this be cut down a little or added to a little? What do you think? And get their feedback. So ultimately, what is all this for? I mean, what's the deal? Why go through all these gyrations? That's really the big question. Here's the reason. You stop and build rapport and make people feel like you're just like them because of the way we connect. It builds that connecting. When you have connection with people, your tendency to not only understand, but to want to understand increases exponentially. And ultimately, all of that builds trust. Folks, trust is actually the firmest foundation that you and I can ever communicate from. And so all of these things are trying to build that body of trust that helps to make your credibility, your authority, your ability to be the expert in the room or on the call rises up exponentially when they trust you. So this is a sliding scale. Everybody, we might be at different levels with individuals. And so I'm just going to end us with this and then just quickly cover our homework. Let's be real for just a moment. I've gone through trying to categorize and really give you some sweeping generalization, but the truth is everybody interprets words uniquely. Okay, so we might do everything right and still kind of miss it, but keep trying. Perfect understanding, always having perfect understanding, that's going to be impossible, but we just want to get better at it. watch out, experts, that you don't use too many acronyms and too much jargon. When you're talking to a layman who's not a technical professional, it can make them feel stupid. I mean, that talk about breaking rapport when they don't get it. And so just watch that, because we forget sometimes that they may not know it. Our goal is to make them feel smarter after having talked to us than not. And the last couple of things are, your clients are going to remember not so much all these details, they're going to remember how you made them feel about working with you. And so I just want to know, do you feel then that all of that makes it worth doing this? The truth is, before you can convince somebody, try to connect. Before you try to convince, it paves the way completely. So here's what I'm leaving you with. That checklist I mentioned to you, that was an attachment. Here it is. You go find this, and I'd like you to print this off to have ready for you, because here's your assignment for next week when we're together. I'd like you to be ready to make just a quick presentation. It could be any one of the types that you make. But seriously, it's going to be 1 to 2 minutes. You're barely going to get started. But what I'd like you to do is at least make it through a couple of slides. And so stay sort of within that period. So if you want to start not just at the introduction, if you want to kind of get a little bit into the body of it, that'll be helpful. So all the normal appropriate visuals that you use those, fill in whatever details that you might really tell. I want you to do this for real. What is it you normally do? Could be a discovery, could be an update, whatever the type of presentation, that's totally up to you. And whatever the client is, totally up to you. But go ahead and be as real life as possible. Be as specific as you can. If you want to, before you start, stop and go, okay, so here's the situation. So if you're starting in the middle, we'll know what's going on. So any questions about that? Because what we'll do, we've got some information we're going to share, and then we'll stop and we'll actually break off into 2 groups. I'll have a colleague here who will break off into 2 groups for this one, and we'll just give them, and we're actually going to have an online, like a little app survey that after your presentation, everybody will give you some feedback. We'll get that sent to you, and you'll then give feedback to all of your colleagues. And here's what happened last time when we did this. It was what everybody said they noticed about others that they liked about their presentations that really captured them. They're like, yes, I love the feedback about mine, but what was so valuable was I had no idea how Simon did it. And to see him do a presentation, it was like, great. Oh, I didn't realize. And somebody else. And so we're going to learn from each other. There's no right or wrong. This is just going to be, what would you normally do? We'll have a chance to make some changes in the 3rd session we're together. You'll do it one more time. Something different if you want, or making any adjustments based on feedback.
So we can pick an actual presentation that we've done for client?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
Pick those slides. You really go grab a chunk of something you're about to do or you've already done. What we want to do is just see what your natural style is. Okay. And yes, that will feel a little like, really, because I know what it's like when you have to make a presentation, but this is about as safe a space as you can get, because everybody's rooting for you. We're all doing the same thing. And that feedback, because once you've been doing these kind of presentations for a while, nobody comes to watch them anymore. Right? Do you ever get feedback from, you might, maybe you do. But a lot of times what happens is we don't even know how we're coming across necessarily until we hear feedback from a client. Let's not wait for that. Let's give each other a little bit of feedback, positive and constructive. Any other thoughts about the assignment?
Yeah, Jackie, is this our goal? Is a call to action, or you're just putting call to action as a way to tell us that that's the action, right? We have an assignment.
Yes, that is. Your assignment this is your call to action, is to do the assignment. And so come prepared with that. But what I do want to say is, for those of you, we didn't spend a lot of time on your profile for DISC. So if you want to come on, I'm on 15 minutes early. If you want to come on a little early, if you've got some questions, come on, we'll talk about your profile. Or if you want to send out an email to me, if you have any questions or anything you want to discuss, I'm a resource to you guys. So you have my email address, or, you know, text me, and my phone is there too. Let me know if I can be of service, because these 2-hour timeframes go pretty fast, and there's things I'm trying to cover in there. Next week, it will be listening and questions, and then we'll dive right into this first round. And really, it's just do what you do. Just show us what you do. That's all this first round is. Any other questions or thoughts? Did you guys get something out of today? Has this been helpful? Yeah?
Yes,
Yep.
it's very much helpful. Yeah.
Okay, great. But again, I don't want to do all the talking. That's why next week and the week after that, part of this is you having a chance to practice some of the things so that we can then help and give each other feedback. You guys, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Again, reach out to me if you need me. I will be back on next week, and I will send you, I think I already sent you your Zoom link, but I will send you next week's workbook materials by Wednesday. So if you don't see it, go look at this in the spam. I'll send another one to Amy and make sure she sends them on as well. And if you have not done your disc and you still want to do it, I get a notification that you've done it and it has results, and I've been trying to forward those on. So if you haven't done it yet, you still want to do it, go for it. I'll see when you finished it, and I will forward to you your results. You guys, it's been great to meet you. I'm looking forward to next week. If you have any other questions, anything else I can answer?
Yeah, just one quick thing. Can you please record future meetings, because I will be not able to join one meeting because I'm on PTO.
Okay.
So if you can record, I can watch later.
Absolutely, we'll do so. You bet.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Jackie.
you.
Thanks all.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Atik, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have one question, Jackie. While I was retrieving from the junk mail, because I did not receive the report, the desk report, so I would like to see. So if you could forward me again. So
Yes. Yes, in fact, give me 30 seconds. I may be able to send you. So you did not take it because you didn't get the email that had your link in there?
No. Actually, some mail I received, but it went to the junk. While I recall that all mail, it's went. I lost those mail.
I'll send it. I'll send you that email, and it'll have the instructions, the email address that you go to look up and your unique code. So look for that in just a few minutes, and know that if it's not there in 5 minutes, go look in junk mail.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. Anybody else? Great to meet you. Look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
I'll be staying here, right?
Well, hang on one second. Let me just see. Why don't we do that? Let me.
Oh, yeah, result. I would like to see that what is my result, which category I'm falling.
Yes. Hold on one second, Atik. Let me find where your hold on. Okay. ATHAKAR, is that right or no?
ATEEQUE.
Yeah. Yes. Hang on. Let's see where that went. Okay, stand by. All right, hold on. Okay. It's A Patel.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Okay. All right. Hang on a second. All right. Let's see. Okay, here we go. So I want you to make sure you've gotten it now. I'm sending it straight to you. A Patel at Hitachi. Hang on, let me make sure I spelled everything right. HitachiSolutions.com.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's off to you, and it'll have a little red code. So when you'll follow the directions, you'll see that code. But I want to make sure you get it.